If DC thinks I'm going to be excited just because there's Batman Beyond in the movie, they're totally right. So guys, how are you? I hope you're doing well. I'm Demonio, the interdimensional demon, who talks the most about DC's animated films on YouTube, and you're on my channel. And we had the first teaser of the second part of the adaptation of Crisis on Infinite Earths, and this teaser showed very interesting things. And we will obviously start with Batman Beyond, and it seems that this film will be more expansive than the first, with the possibility of showing characters that weren't originally in the Tomorrowverse, and also characters that weren't even in the original comic book story, as is the case with Batman Beyond. But Demonio, Batman Beyond takes place in the future, where the Bruce of that time is already old. How is it possible for him to appear in the film? In the original comic book story, there is a moment when present, past, and future begin to collide, and I believe that the presence of Batman Beyond will be a consequence of this effect. And I thought it was very clever on the part of the animators, because in Part 1, we already have the arc of Batman from Earth 1 understanding the importance of family, especially when he meets part of his family, like Robin and Huntness from Earth 2. And little by little Batman understands that working as a team in Gotham could be a possibility, since Dick Grayson already exists on Earth 1. And here we will have the entire Bat family, including Batgirl, or Robin who appears to be Damian Wayne. We also have who appears to be Batwing Luke Fox, and also Dick Grayson along with Huntness, who we had already seen in Part 1, and now we will have the addition of Batman Beyond to the Bat family. We don't yet know if this Batman Beyond will be Terry McGinnis, as he was in his original animation, or if it will be a version of Bruce Wayne himself but from another universe, but I believe it will be Terry McGinnis. But Demonio, who is this Terry McGinnis guy? For those who don't know, he is the protagonist of the animation Batman Beyond, which takes place in 2054, and is the new Batman at that time. Terry is a clone of Batman from the Justice League animation, created at the request of Amanda Waller, so that he would eventually replace Bruce Wayne and the world would not be left without a Batman. All of this is told in a special episode of Justice League called Epilogue, and it's well worth watching this episode if you don't know the character's story. Another thing that draws a lot of attention are these shadows of the Anti-Monitor, which are enemies that are in the comics, and which practically confirms the presence of the Anti-Monitor as the great villain of this saga, discarding all those internet theories that the animation's villain could be Dr. Manhattan. The fact that we have the Anti-Monitor as the main villain, I believe will give more importance to the Monitor character, since in the first film he did not have such an active role in the story. He was supposed to serve as a kind of guide for the narrative, but in Part 1, Constantine played this role, so I believe that now the character can be better explored, even he needs to be able to rival the Anti-Monitor, since both are counterparts, and need this antagonism. Another interesting thing is the prominence that Kara Zor-El had in the teaser. In Part 1 we learned that she was the Harbinger, but this was not very well explained, so probably this scene of her with Monitor is a flashback of her gaining the powers or the abilities that made her transform into Harbinger. I believe that Kara will be the protagonist of Part 2, just like Flash was the protagonist of the first part, and I believe that it will be a great arc for the character, mainly because she already lost the person she loved at the end of the Part 1. I believe that at some point Kara will sacrifice herself, and will die, since that is what happens in the comics. Of course we can take into account that they are not faithfully following the comics, and that a lot of things are being changed, but I believe they won't miss the opportunity to recreate the iconic scene of dead Kara, with Superman holding her in his arms, as besides being one of the covers of the comic, it is one of the most iconic DC scenes of all time. The animation quality seems to be similar to the first part, which is a little higher than the Tomorrowverse average, but very far from DC's older animations, which apparently had a much bigger budget, but that's what we have at the moment. This film will be part 2 of a trilogy, and it will probably focus on solving the problem of this temporal effect and presenting the great threat, which must only be fought in the third film. Despite having some reservations, I like the first part. The script's idea of focusing on a single character and making his arc connect with the main story works very well in the first film. And this format makes perfect sense if you to think they don't have the hundreds of characters they had in the comics at their disposal. If this format is repeated here with Kara, considering that we will have a good script, as in Part 1, this Part 2 has a lot of potential to be even better than Part 1, but I believe that if you hated the first film, this second will hardly please you. But what about you? Do you have good expectations for the second film? Leave it in the comments, and if you like the video, subscribe to follow the next content. Until next time my people, demonic hugs.